Welcome to Web3 Women, where we showcase all women in the blockchain ecosystem. We provide you with their perspective of how this ecosystem is being built and what they're doing to increase more awareness and adoption when it comes to blockchain and all the different type of use cases. In this space, we tell you that there are women in blockchain, and I'm telling you, there are women. There are women that's been here from the very beginning, and there are women that's been adding value ever since. And one of them I have with me today, and I'm so happy to have her, Radhika Iyengar. I'm really excited to have her here because her and I go way back to 2018 in California where we met. But since then, she's been doing so much in this space and she's been here for far longer than that. I want her to introduce herself and please pay attention to what she has to say. Hi, Radhika.
Hi, Yinka. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for highlighting women in blockchain and Web3. It's so important that we hear from women's perspectives and voices in this space. I'm hoping that a lot more women will just come in droves into this space.
Definitely. Yes, please go ahead, expand some more. How did you get into this space?
Well, that was back in 2017. And I'll say I got into the space because of my colleague and partner, Jordan Woods, whom you also know. He has been a pioneer in this space for the last 2 decades on the decentralization technology side. And first time I got into this space was really because of crypto, and it was also because of looking at Ethereum and looking at, building things in this area. And so that's kind of what really sparked my interest. And I've been involved on the healthcare side for the last decade plus. It goes back to my original passions. At one time, I thought I was going to become a doctor. So the healthcare space is a space that I continue to be very interested and involved in. But when I looked at the technology itself, I had my own aha moment saying there's a huge need and application for this technology in a number of different areas, including healthcare. But I would say that for me, it was all about, how do we resolve some of the inconsistencies, inadequacies, inefficiencies, in whatever you want to call it, so many deficiencies when it comes to the data story. And so I guess I'm somewhat of a data geek. And so everything that comes to me when I think about things such as data, particularly things in healthcare, that whole data story is incredibly deficient right now. It's spotty, it's fragmented, it's siloed, and it's like we're all talking different languages and can't come to a common place of understanding. And so for me, when I looked at that back in 2017 is when I said, I got to dive in, I've got to dive into the deep end of the pool, and I really have to just really get into this space. And so that was really, I would say, my first moment of entry. And as I began to speak at conferences, whether it was keynotes or panels or discussions, and write about my views in this space, there was a kind of a body of work that started emerging from all of that. So Jordan and I were heavily involved in, I think in 2018, between the two of us, we must have spoken at about 100 conferences. And through that body of work, I came away with the realization, just as he did, saying, we've got something here and we need to put that together cohesively and crystallize our thoughts and our views and our thesis in a book. And so that's exactly what we did in 2019. We co-authored a pretty seminal book, I think early for its time, because we didn't call it anything about Web3, but that's what we talk about throughout the book. So it's called Enterprise Blockchain Has Arrived. I've got a copy of it here in case anybody wants to check it out. But it really is about the rise of Web3. I think that's line 1 of our preface, is talking about Web3 and the whole ethos around Web3 is what drives the book, what drives our thesis, why we're doing what we're doing today, and why we're leading efforts in so many different ways. So that's kind of my entree, but also my story when it comes to Web3.
Man, I love it. I love that you and Jordan connected and was able to write such a wonderful book introducing, the general public to what the concept of Web3 is.
Yeah.
You and I, we've had this discussion so many times, and we both share the same view that Web3, the way that it's quote unquote being built right now, is not the way that we had envisioned it back when we first, joined. So I want you to provide your perspective of what Web3 is, as well as what do you think about the way that it's being constructed? Because in the last few years, the dynamic has changed a little.
Well, technology is an evolution. It's not a static conversation about any emerging technology. So, I've been here in Silicon Valley for 2.5+ decades and have seen enough arcs of technology to know that it's not created overnight. We didn't find ourselves in any of the webs overnight. And so as we have transitioned from Web 1 to Web 2 and now into Web 3, that's a transition that occurs over time because there's an evolutionary process that happens. So the picture that we had in 2017 with all of that glitz and glam and hype and troughs around crypto, just put a big spotlight, if you like, on this technology and what it was about. But it's not like it was going to happen at that one moment and that was the end of story. It's been an evolution, and already we can see that there's been various waves in this evolution. Some, I would say many of those waves we've predicted in our book. We kind of laid out the timeline for adoption and what that adoption was going to look like. But it was more than just the technology itself. I think for me personally, Web3 is a state of mind. There is a unique aspect to Web3 which requires a particular mindset, and that's why I call it a state of mind, because it's not just about the technology. If you look at the core drivers of transformation and why this technology is happening, we'll have to kind of rewind a little bit and talk about Web 2. So what was Web 2, or what has Web 2 been? And if you look at Web 2, it really was, the internet has been about communication, and that is based on the TCP/IP protocol. It's packets of information that are sent and received. That's all it was really envisioned to do. It was supposed to democratize access to information, people sharing information and posting about information. That was a lot of Web 1 too. What was different about Web 2 is ownership of data, because there was a centralized control or a centralized authority or a centralized owner of that data. And so, we often talk about what's the difference between Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. Web 1 is people just post, and that's it. You just post information. Web 2 is that same person, let's say it's me, I post and someone else monetizes, someone else owns that information. I'm using a platform and posting on that platform, but the platform owns everything on it. And Web 3 is about me posting, and then I get to own everything and I get to monetize it. And so it's the conversation, the power plays, if you will, the dynamic changes. And so for me, this whole mindset around Web3 has to do with, it's decentralized for sure. I mean, that central authority, that central owner, there is no owner. We all are sort of jointly providing our content. We own it. We share what we want to share across a network, different use cases, different examples that can be talked about, and I'm just talking in the abstract. It's about a trustless system because the trust comes from the network. In the Web 2 world, the trust comes from a central authority, a central entity, an owner who gives that trust and say, well, I can do business with you because we're going through this intermediary, and that intermediary is establishing trust. Well, what is trust online, right? How can you and I, Yinka, do business together? We've met, we have a certain rapport and a certain inherent trust that comes from that. But if you're interacting with another entity, another person online for the first time, how is trust established? So Web3 is about a trust that comes from the network, and that's very powerful as a concept. It's peer-to-peer, it's direct, meaning there's no intermediary. And then more than anything else, and this is the part where I say it's a state of mind, Web3 is about community. It's not about the Web2 kind of model where I get to put something out and I own, well, someone else owns it. And basically, that whole ownership dialogue means that everything is stacked against the person who's putting out the content, right? And so the power of community doesn't really come into play at all, because it's about, if I have to rise up to the top in that kind of a world, it's usually because someone else has to fail or someone else has to be undermined in that road. It's that zero-sum mentality is what we talk about. So in Web3, it's very much about a community ethos. It's about a community that has shared ownership, that is open source. You can build on another person's body of work. And I think there are developers who get into Web3 because they find that compelling, that it's just so different, right? So I think this concept of community is extremely important in Web3, because now suddenly that ethos becomes, it's about we, not I. And so, here again, and I'll say this for people that might be interested in this point of view, women, I think, have a natural we mentality. I think most women I know of,
yes, we do.
families, we start with our communities, whether it's our neighborhood, whether it's the larger local community. Community is very much at the heart of what we do, and we always think about something that's beyond just us as individuals. And so I think that's extremely powerful, because we have this innate capability to think along we lines. So when I look at what Web3 means, and I speak so extensively about it and try to highlight the importance of women getting into this space, it's because I think we're natural we builders. And so this is that mindset. This is that state of mind that is so compelling. It's so powerful. And I think, the power of this kind of mindset is going to be so necessary if we're going to build a better future. That's the other part of my journey, is building things that are beyond just me and my immediate, but it's about something that's bigger. It's the power of a community that can come together to solve problems. All of the big challenges we have globally today are going to need us to transcend just the me and the I and the ego, and go beyond that and say, what can we do as a global community to solve problems? Because something that happens here is going to affect someone somewhere else. And so that connectivity and that correlation and that cause and effect is very much, we're living those moments now, where we're seeing things happen in one part of the world and they have a direct impact on someone else in some other part of the world. So we've got to transcend that I mentality if we're going to solve some of the really, really big thorny problems we have in society today and around the world. So that's, to me, encapsulated a lot of that we ethos, and that community spirit is so much at the heart of Web3. So when I hear of people who are getting involved in this space, that's the first thing that I'm going to tell them is, do you have a we mindset? And if not, reflect on that. Reflect on what that means, because otherwise it's going to be really hard for you to succeed in this space. You're still going to be superimposing a I culture and an I mentality on something that is inherently a we culture.
Wow. Wow. I love the we culture, and if you don't mind, I'm gonna start using that from now on.
Please.
You're right. It's all about community. It's all about how we collectively can move forward with this technology. You mentioned a few things with your book. You mentioned that you guys wrote it and actually outline how adoption will happen. I'm curious to see what your thought process is with the way things are being adopted now.
Great question. I think we've gotten it more or less pretty correctly, because we saw that, first of all, we ourselves as authors, and our own personal backgrounds, we come from more of an enterprise sort of background. And so for us, we knew that, for example, in the internet, that's how it happened, where it was enterprise that got in. There was a hype around internet, what it was, and there were the usual wrong kind of people in the internet in the early days, and gave it a really bad reputation and a bad rap. And it was banned from corporations. You couldn't access internet from within a corporation, et cetera. And there were reasons why. Very sort of similar sort of situation, I would say, with Web3 and the onset of that. So we knew that enterprise was going to be involved in legitimizing this space, in looking at the actual capability of this technology to do things that were not possible in a Web 2 framework. And so building these kind of traceability, extreme transparency, that's another core belief or ethos of Web3, is having extreme transparency across a network. Having everybody has the same visibility and basically a copy of the data live in real time, right? These are very, very powerful sort of frameworks, and they're absolutely at the heart of Web3. And so their enterprise has gotten involved. They started getting involved back in 2018, 2019. There's a reason why we call the book Enterprise Blockchain Has Arrived, because it had arrived in 2019. Was it pervasive yet? No, but it had arrived. And I think enterprises were taking note of the fact that there is something important happening here. There are problems we need to solve as businesses that we can't do with Web 2 mindsets. And in some cases, like in life sciences, for example, healthcare and life sciences is an area, like I said, that I've been involved in. In life sciences, there was a regulatory tailwind. So in 2013, it was the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, which was passed. And so that, gave a 10-year lifeline saying, okay, a lifetime saying, or a timeline, sorry, 10-year timeline to say that by 2023, we have to know how drugs are manufactured, how the materials are sourced. There has to be complete traceability from the very inception or the very start of that supply chain all the way into the hands of the consumer. How do you do that? And the only way you can do that is through proving complete traceability across that supply chain. So these are things that are very complex, very difficult, and can't be done with Web 2. So enter Web 3, where you've got complete transparency across the supply chain, end-to-end transparency, as we say it. That was really going to change the nature of things. So this is kind of what we were observing, is that there were some tailwinds, either market or regulatory tailwinds, that were really spurring on the adoption of Web3. And then, we thought it's just going to continue, and it's going to mirror sort of maybe a bit of that internet timeline, where you're going to start seeing more consumer applications, much like we did after the enterprise wave of internet, and it was consumer applications that started coming in. What surprised us, I think, is the big boom, if you will, of NFTs.
Yes.
So suddenly it was NFTs and metaverse. And so my colleague Jordan, he's been a pioneer in 3D online worlds for the last 20 years. And I remember him having that aha moment, saying, oh, wow, here we are. This is what I've been waiting for, right? I predicted this would happen 20 years ago. This was one of his companies that he had been starting at the time. So to see this happening now, I think took a little bit of like, oh, wow, it's really happening. And it's different. It's not crypto, right? So it is a token. Non-fungible token is a token by nature, but it's not like a cryptocurrency token. It's a token that is about proof of ownership of a rare and unique digital asset. It is about taking that, and it's not just about art, even though that's what's captured the mind share in a lot of what's happened. So there's been some surprises in our timeline or in our prediction, because we knew that NFTs were happening, but at the same time, we didn't really realize that maybe that was what's going to kind of shift the needle in terms of mainstream consciousness, mainstream awareness of this, and really putting a big spotlight on Web3. Suddenly, Web3 was the big buzzword, at least here in Silicon Valley. You know, entrepreneurs getting into the space, VCs putting major dollars into the space, which is continuing to till today. And so it's not exactly crypto, but it's kind of a new kind of realization that there is an extremely valuable, there's value in that NFT. So it's not just about NFTs being collectible anymore, although there's a lot of that too. It's about NFTs having utility value. That NFT can be then used for something that creates value from that. So that's, I think, has been a bit of a surprise in terms of how we predicted things would happen, and how they've kind of evolved and developed. You can't have everything in the crystal ball. When you write something like this as a technology book, you know that it's a moment in time that you make a call, and then things kind of take their shape and form in slightly different ways. By and large, I'd say that the adoption has come true. We're just basically calling it that between this year and next year, that exponential growth is going to continue. And we also predicted trillions of dollars of value in business opportunities in this space. And absolutely, we're seeing that happen. If you look at any of the predictions and the market predictions on not just NFTs, but metaverse, but Web3 in general, absolutely, we can see that there's trillions of dollars of opportunity across many different sectors. And that part has absolutely come true. So, or is coming true. So, I wanted to shed a little bit of light on it and provide a little context into our prediction and how it kind of evolved, and what was our thinking when we made these predictions, and did they or didn't they happen?
Now, I love the fact that you gave us context and history into this. When we both first got into this space, the only NFT that were around that was even remotely popular was CryptoKitties, right? And didn't really expect that to be revisited, but here we are.
Yep.
But at the same time, I know you just released your own NFT this month, so let's talk about it.
Well, it brings me to a really great point, which is NFTs that have value, and there's utility value in NFTs. It is a collectible, but it is also something that has value, and the value comes from the mission that is behind this collection. So, Yinka, you and I have known a few years now, and both you and I are on the journey, I would say, and on the path of technology for social good, technology for positive change in the world. I know we have a shared ethos on that. So this NFT collection, which is called Astro Sapiens, that's the name of the project. The project has an NFT collection. It has a community, a pretty vibrant community, and you're a part of that. I'm really happy that you are. And it has a DAO we're building around this, truly decentralized DAO or governance structure. And then we have a foundation. The Astro Sapiens Foundation is drawing its funds from the sale of the collection, primary and secondary sales, to be able to provide grants to key programs, key organizations that are driving positive social change in the way that we want to have this change happen and accelerated. There are a couple of big, I would say, thoughts behind this. Number one, why is it Astro Sapiens? So first of all, it is about space. It is about frontier technology. Space is one of them. There is an importance, I think, that space technology and everything that is around that can offer to all of humanity. There are things happening on Earth that require space technologies. Number one, for us to understand Earth a little bit better, you kind of have to see it from outside in. Number two, we do need to think about life beyond Earth. It won't happen in my lifetime or your lifetime, perhaps, but it will happen at some point. And so I think inspiring and getting more diverse people involved in this space is a huge push. So it's diverse and united in the cosmos is the way we talk about it. And it's a little bit of that philosophical perspective too. So space is also a metaphor, because you might have heard of astronauts going up into space, and they have something called the overview effect. They look back on Earth and it looks suddenly like just a fragile planet, a fragile celestial entity in the big expanse of the universe. And that realization, astronauts have come back, and it really changes their view. And I often think, well, wouldn't it be great if all of us had that opportunity to have that perspective? Because we might actually stop fighting and bickering as much as we do. We're not a very big, important race. Whether we like to believe it or not, but we're very arrogant about it, and we keep talking about, things that we're very entitled as a race, I think. And so I think that outside in perspective is really healthy for all of us to experience. And I think there may be more opportunities along these lines in the metaverse, where you can explore that. And so there's some really powerful things that are happening along those lines. So I think with this Astro Sapiens project, we want to empower diverse and inclusive representation in advanced technologies, in emerging technologies, in frontier technologies. Absolutely, space is one of them. Number two, we want to see diverse and inclusive representation in STEAM disciplines. And so we are hugely supporting women and girls, and how we can hopefully close those gaps a lot faster. I mean, last we checked, it's like 134 years before we achieve, any parity. It's ridiculous. Right? It's unconscionable. It's unimaginable that we have to be talking about that today. That has to go away. And we all have to work together as a global community to solve these problems. It's not going to be me or my colleague or anybody else. It's going to be all of us on this journey together, and in being as inclusive of other communities and other leaders who are doing things in this vein, but linking arms with them rather than saying we're all building things in silo. Because if you start doing that, then it's the same classic Web 2 sort of mentality saying, well, I'm doing this. Great, bravo. That mentality hasn't gotten as far because everybody's reinventing the wheel. Everybody's doing something in their isolated corner. We'd love to see the community of communities, network of networks effect. That happens with what we're doing, where we can bring leaders, organizations, communities, and it's not even, I hate the word into our fold, because that's also Web 2 mentality. It's side by side. So everybody has, in true decentralized autonomous fashion, we're going to be doing things on our own, that nothing to take away from any of what we're doing on our own. But if we can share and we can link and we can connect and we can correlate, now you've got something that is much, much bigger, because the sum is going to be greater than the parts. So this is kind of our thinking with this project. We just launched at the end of August. We are supporting at launch 2 absolutely phenomenal programs. One is in space. So it's the Space Foundation's Moon Colony Kit, which is inspired by Artemis, the mission. And as you know, the Artemis mission is to put the first woman and the first person of color on the moon. That's pretty outstanding. And then it's also to build the first moon colony or lunar base. So if you think about, and Vice President Kamala Harris just came out recently with with the fact sheet from the National Space Council, which she heads. And she was talking about that, saying, stop that for a moment. Think about that, which is living and working on the moon. That's going to be pretty mind-boggling even to think about it, right? But what it is going to make very clear is that we can't just have the usual people we think about when we think about space. What do people think about? They think about astronauts, they think about rocket scientists, they think about engineers. Sure, we're going to need all of them, to build these rockets, to travel up into space, absolutely. But what about the people building the community? We're going to have all different kinds of people involved. So the Moon Colony Kit draws attention to 50 different careers, school children to students from grades 4 through 8. And in this first cohort, in this pilot program, which by the way is in collaboration with NASA and the White House National Space Council, Astro Sapiens Foundation is the principal sponsor of this program, and we are a partner at the table, wanting this program to be beyond what it is just at launch, right? So at launch, we have 1,000 kits, 1,000 that are available. A majority of these kits will be given to students from Title I schools, which, as you know, is from underrepresented and underprivileged neighborhoods, largely brown and black. And we need to level the playing field of opportunity. So these kids, number one, these kids need to be empowered earlier in life. We can't wait for them to get to high school or college to make that plant the seed of opportunity. It has to be planted well in advance, because these children have to grow up thinking, dreaming about the opportunities and in visualizing themselves in these opportunities. And so these 50 different careers, by the way, showcase both men and women of all different backgrounds. And a few of them are actually modeled on real live people and their profiles. So, you know, a little girl, a little boy can dream of being involved in this venture and saying, hey, I want to be a part of space. And there's a whole range of different areas that I can explore. But it is also a gamified sort of experience for these children. So they basically have to solve puzzles and figure out how they're going to build a moon colony. And the educators, the teachers who are part of this, they just had their free training through NASA and Space Foundation. So this program is going to be launched basically during World Space Week in the beginning of October. We're starting with 20,000 children and 5,000 educators in this program. It's phenomenal. I want to get to as many of the schools as possible across the country, because all of these children and all of the educators really need to be on board with this. So that's one program. We're very, very excited about this. And the fact that we're partnering with some pretty big names in the business is extraordinary. Number two, we are, again, partnered and principal backers of the Mission Impact Professional Leadership Development Program. And that leadership development program is really extraordinary because Mission Impact, as you know, has a vision to empower and upskill 1 million women in Web3. And that's something that also needs to have as much support as possible, because I don't want to wake up tomorrow and say, gosh, women are behind again. You know, we've got to close this gap again. And it's already happening in crypto. I think 85%, maybe 90% of crypto are white male. We've got to change those demographics. We need more women. We need more diversity and inclusion on all levels. So I think that these are the broad themes that we're working on. And then I'll just end with the fact that our philosophy and our view and our whole impetus behind Astra Sapiens is about leveling the playing field of opportunity in terms of wealth creation and multi-generational wealth. And so in order for women and for diverse and inclusive communities, underrepresented communities, to have that launching pad earlier in life, for them to be able to pursue, you know, really extraordinary careers in high growth sectors with high paying jobs, for them to not only find financial success and stability themselves, but then to be able to pass that on to their future generations and their families, is something that I think incredibly important for all of us to realize. And we can have a part in that. We can accelerate that progress. I come from humble beginnings myself. Came many, many moons ago to the United States on a full scholarship to the United States with a lot of dreams and a lot of hopes. And I've had my road and my journey, but, never losing sight of the fact that, we are all created equal, and we need to have equal and equitable access to opportunity. So if I've been able to do anything in my life, it's because I had access to some opportunity and I stepped up and was able to take advantage of that opportunity and, prove myself and shine and do well, not entirely without adversity. I think women of color have our own sets of adversity throughout our lives, and we continue having to pivot. But I think that makes us stronger, that makes us resilient, that makes us very creative, I think, and resourceful in the way we navigate our own paths and our own careers. I would love for those playing fields to be, just being able to share that with more women, more underrepresented people, for all of us to have a better fighting chance at success and financial stability and growth from there. And I know these are themes, Yinka, that you are deeply, deeply committed to with your
100%.
financial literacy and bringing women into the framework. It's all important. And that's why you're part of our community, and we'd love to be part of yours, because again, together we can actually create the kind of accelerated change towards positive growth in the ways we want to do it.
I love the NFT. I love the concept. I love the fact that it's geared towards social good because, as you said, this future is tech, but also we do have to think about beyond Earth, right?
Yes.
There is a need for us to be more hands-on when it comes to space, and so giving the younger generation opportunity to understand space a little bit better and also understand the concept of we.
Yes.
We're targeting and exploring space, right?
Yes.
And for the benefit of the next generation.
Right.
I love it. Wow, careers in on the moon. Like I'm like, we're just getting through the metaverse.
Well, and I think that's going to be just as important a medium to explore, because some people may not, envision themselves, or maybe are not able to do that. But I think, metaverse and the multiple metaverses we're going to see are going to permit us to explore, a different world in a virtual setting. And I think those are just some extraordinary opportunities for us to be able to use those kinds of mediums to share and, again, democratize access in so many different ways, and how we build this metaverse, not tying it to, VR or AR. I'm sure that those are very enriching channels to take advantage of, but that's not leveling the playing field, because most people are not going to have access to expensive equipment or VR headsets or so on and so forth. So again, thoughtfully constructing a metaverse that has accessibility at the ground floor level, saying we need to make it accessible through smartphones, through PCs, what have you, that more people are going to have access to and can be a part of. I think that inclusivity has to be baked in. And that's going to have a conduit. So maybe they can do simulations in the metaverse, and then go up into space. I don't know. There's so many different ways. I think the future is just so exciting and so promising if we can harness the power of technology in the right ways to do important things on Earth.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think this is fantastic. I love the concept we learned. Web3 is all about we.
Yes.
You can't have Web without we. So there. But it's time for our hot topics. It's hot topics. And one of the major hot topics that came out is Vitalik coming out with his proposal on what a true decentralized autonomous organization should be. So I want to hear from you. What did you walk away with from his, thesis of what it should look like?
No, great. I mean, I'm glad he wrote his thought piece on that. It's incredibly important to have his view and his opinion on that. I don't know that I entirely agree with every single point in that piece, but the one point that I think I was really happy to see and extracted, it was very much a validation of what we're doing with our DAO, with Astro Sapiens. So we are building a truly decentralized DAO. Every person, every member is going to have an equal voice at the table. That's going to be incredibly important. We are envisioning a true flat structure. And I think that the point that Vitalik made on when you have a DAO that is constructed for a cause, which we are, I think that decentralization is just on point. The main reason being is that when you look at the makeup, for example, with our DAO, who's coming into our DAO? You're a part of our DAO, Yinka. Super happy that you're part of our DAO. We need people of all backgrounds, of all manner of expertise, capabilities, because we're doing this collaborative effort together. We're building this together. And it's a bit of a technology experiment, a social experiment, a governance experiment. There are plenty of potholes we need to be aware of when we're building this and building the framework. So we've got some really great experts already part of the DAO who are going to be hands-on in this effort. But the one thing that Vitalik talked about was that when a DAO has to be about a cause, it has to be truly decentralized. For us, that means that when we think about who's a part of this DAO and that we have this decentralized autonomous organization with this diverse group of people, for every person to have an equal voice is incredibly, incredibly important, because some of the members of our DAO are not necessarily experts in a technical or any of that kind of context, but they have lived experience. Mm-hmm. When you have different people with different lived experiences, and then you're trying to back a cause, you're trying to create a positive change in a direction, and you have someone or some people with that kind of lived experience in that arena who can speak up and talk from their experience in terms of what could work and what doesn't work in their opinion, that insight is going to be incredibly valuable and critically important. And so for us, the decentralized autonomous organization for a cause, which is what we are, is going to have to draw from people of all different backgrounds and lived experiences to contribute their thoughts and weigh in when we are as a making a decision. So what do you think about this program? Should we back this program? You know, how much should we give to this? Making decisions or taking decisions in any of these contexts is going to be very nuanced. And so these voices of lived experience are going to be absolutely essential as we continue forward, backing the kind of programs we want to back through the foundation. So this is very much a community effort. It is community sourcing all of that information. It is community decision-making in its absolute decentralized sense. So I think that that's what I walked away with and said, yep, I think we're kind of on the right path. This is a bit of an experiment. We will see. The proof is in the pudding, as they say. And so as we build this and we start executing on this, we will see how we're on mark or off mark, and we will tweak those models as necessary. But I think there again, I'm absolutely grateful. We're grateful to have such a valuable set of people with us on this journey from the get-go, who are building this with us, with this shared vision and shared passion.
Now, I love it. I love the fact that you're cognizant about the development of and the structure of the DAO, right? Because a lot of people, have entered the space, and DAO seems to be a gimmicky word now for some people, to create something to feel like they're participating in the space. One of the stuff that I was really disheartened about is the ENS, the DAO, the way that they structured their whole delegation process. Yeah. Taking the votes from the people and now delegating it to a chosen few did not. To me, it was like
that kind of rings a little bit like the electoral system here,
That part,
and we know the pitfalls. We've already walked that path, and we know it's not perfect at all, and it doesn't serve our needs. So I think decentralization, that's why I said this is a mindset, and it's very easy when human beings are involved. This is what I'm saying. It's kind of a bit of the two sides of a coin. The success of a DAO is in the people. Yes. The failure of a DAO is also in its people. So it's important to have the right kind of people with the right kind of mindset, that state of mind that we talked about right in the beginning of our conversation. I can't emphasize that enough. If we don't have that right mindset or state of mind, we will have a much more difficult chance at succeeding. So, the probability of success absolutely hinges on our ability to separate ourselves, our egos, from the greater community and what we're doing. Very difficult to do because, we all have our moments. We want to exert our opinion. it's human nature is what it is. It's not perfect. I think if we were perfect, we would all be divine, and we're not. We're flawed individuals. So what we can do is say, and again, the power of a community in its decentralization, at least from a utopian perspective, is that we can also be accountability partners for one another, and that we can remind each other when we have those moments of weakness and our ego exerts itself, and say, yo, check your ego at the door. This is now the community and this is the we. So stop and take 5, and come back in when you're re-engaging on the we, plane of thought. And I think we can do that together. And I think when you are, again, this is what I took away from Vitalik's paper, and this is again the directions we're marching in, is that the DAO that has to be about a cause is about bringing people with a shared passion and a shared purpose. And that purpose transcends who we are as individuals, because it's what we create together, which is much more important and valuable. So it's very hard. I think this is where I say it's a bit of an experiment, and we're kind of holding our breath as we do this. But every step of the way, and including when I read this paper with Vitalik's paper, I walked away with a sense that, okay, I think we're kind of marching hopefully in the right direction. At least we're marching with our hearts in the right place and minds in the right place. And I'm sure we'll learn a lot along the journey. And I'm sure there will be things that we will want to have things done better, and we'll learn along the way. But if we can all have that humility and saying we're trying to create this for the greater good and we're doing it together, then hopefully we can kind of keep everybody all together moving in a direction that we all feel is the right way to do something.
Agree. Now, I do have to ask you one last thing, because it's time for our tips time, right? What is the one tip that you will provide someone when they're just entering this space? What do you want them to have at their disposal?
Be open. It comes back to mindset. A lot of things, new things, I think, is a bit of that leap of faith, and it's a bit of that, optimism and open mind and open spirit when you're coming across something. It's easy to read things. I encourage everybody to read. You read copiously, absorb things like a sponge, but do so, with a critical mindset too. And, there is that balance between critical mindset and skepticism. We've got to keep an open spirit. You can question, you can challenge, you can debate, you can discourse. By all means, do that, because we need that. We need that fresh set of eyes any way we can have it. And so I think fresh eyes and fresh perspectives and diverse and inclusive perspectives, because we all have our lived experiences that we can offer that shape our view into something. I think that's very much a strength. If I look at anything that is the biggest asset on earth is biodiversity.
Yes.
So if we can tap into our biodiversity and really tap into those strengths, I think we're going to be on a good footing. But I would say be open, embrace and be open, and be critical too, and more than anything, look at this, because it's going to be around for several decades. The internet has been around for 3 decades or so. And Web3 is going to be, we're just getting started. This is a nascent time to get involved. I encourage everybody, diverse and inclusive, to get involved big time, because the opportunities are great. And I think we can all have very fulfilling lives and careers in this space. And we do absolutely need better representation across the board. But, approach it with that open mindset.
I love it. You guys heard it here. Be open, and change your mindset. It has to be a mindset of we. Y'all heard it here. Radhika, I want to thank you greatly for providing this wonderful perspective of, how we're building Web3, what Web3 is, as well as how we can improve Web3, because that's what I heard. When you open your eyes and open your mindset, and also be open and have the concept of we, not me, not I, but we.
Well, we will all rise together, right? That's the final word is we will all rise together.
Exactly. I
Thank
want
you,
you to
Nika. Thank you so
subscribe.
much.
Make sure you subscribe and also follow Radhika. How can they follow you? How can they get in contact with you and all?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn. Look me up, and just put me a little note saying, "Hey, I heard you on Olayinka's great podcast." To give me a little bit of context on how you came across me, because I do get a lot of people reaching out. I want to hear from you. And then, of course, I'm on Twitter at @Iyengar13, so you can follow me there. And look forward to hearing from some of you, if and that interaction. And Yinka, thank you so much. It has been so much fun.
Yes.
So can't wait till we have another chat.
Yes, same here. I just want to thank you. It's always fantastic talking to you because we share the same type of concept when it comes to this space, and I really love it. We can talk.
Shared spirits.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, everyone. That's it for Web3 Women. I'd like to thank you for joining us. Make sure you subscribe, and we shall see you next time. I bid you adieu. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.